Hello, my fellow Johnnies, especially you, Rollins. A little cloud of smoke, just for you, for calling me a fraud. I know I'm feeling a little bit better today. If you couldn't tell by my mood, a lot to like in this performance. 84 to 70 win in Hinkle Fieldhouse. And look, I'm not fully sold on a turnaround yet. Not by any stretch. You know, I said at the end of the last pod, go win this one, win Creighton, win another one maybe, and then we can start talking. Put on another performance like this on Saturday, and I'll start to be convinced. Back-to-back road wins against decentish opponents, both quad one games, I believe, would be, would be a turning point. I think that would look like the start of a nice turnaround. But let's focus on this one now. Defense. I thought they were much better as a whole in that second half. Once again, the first half defense did not seem to bring it. It was almost like a carbon copy of the Georgetown game in that sense where, we played a tight game for a half because our defense was not on the same level that our offense was working at. And then the second half, the defense woke up, snapped into place, and the offense stayed humming. And that's how we won both of these games against Georgetown and Butler here in league play. We held Butler to just 48 shot attempts, which is pretty crazy. We took significantly more shots than that. What did we take? We had 66 shot attempts. So we won the shot attempt battle by 18 shots. Pretty impressive. A large part of that forcing 21 turnovers. That's the most Butler's had on the season. They had 17 once before. I think that was the loss to SMU that they played. And the other part of that was offensive rebounding. I mean, I've harped on the offensive rebound, or defensive rebounding, our opponent's offensive rebounding all season long. It's been our bugaboo. It has been the single biggest problem for this team. I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but we are one of the worst teams in the country when it comes to offensive rebounding. So, yeah, I don't know. I lost my stats. Suffice to say, we're bottom quarter percentile at best in defensive rebounding percentage. So, to see that happen, we held them to just 6 offensive rebounds. And that's not because they're Butler. They're actually a very good offensive rebounding team so far this season. They rebound at 38.2% on the offensive glass. That's 94th percentile in the country. So that's a very good offensive rebounding team. You could see why with an athlete like Ajayi in the front court. But we kept them off our defensive glass, and that's something that we have not done all year. So of all the positives and things that you could take from this game to say, hey, I think maybe we are making that turn, this would definitely be number one on the list. You took a good rebounding team and you held them down. And I know Ajayi had some foul trouble, but that's not going to impact him that much on the offensive glass. He still played 30 minutes, and he only had 1 offensive rebound himself. And like I said, as a team, they only had 6. So great job on our defensive glass there. And I think when I've talked about this in the past, I've expressed that I think it's partially schematic. I think one of the biggest issues is with all of the switching, you're not always guaranteed to have a forward down low. And I think the savvy teams, the well-coached teams are taking advantage of that and telling their guys, look for, a mismatch underneath. And if you can't even, let's say it's a mismatch, but he's being fronted, okay, maybe I chuck up the 3 then because we're going to get that offensive rebound. Or if he's got a guy and I can lob it over the top to him because he's got a 6-foot Dylan Darling on him on the switch, then we can do that. And so I think a lot of teams have been doing, taking advantage of those mismatches when they show up in the post because of how often we switch. And that's led our forwards to not really be in position a whole lot for defensive rebounds, or at least not a lot relative to what you would expect. Your 6'9" all Big East center/forward to be doing. So, just a great job on that. And I think that scheme we were switching a lot less today, and I like that. I think that's the better way moving forward, given this personnel. I just don't think the guards on this team have the size and strength and rebounding ability to make those switches. Kadari could guard practically 1 to 5. There was very few centers that he couldn't guard by fronting them and using his athleticism. So, you don't have those guys this year, and for that reason, you might not be able to play the way you wanted to play. And I think we saw a little bit of that with a little bit less switching. It felt like Zuby or Mitchell or Hopkins was always in a decent space there to get a nice board. And I think, the other part and parcel of that is we started the 3 forwards. We haven't done that in a while. We started Zuby, Mitchell, and Hopkins all together. Didn't get to see them for very long. Hopkins picked up 2 quick fouls. I think it was in the first 2 to 3 minutes. Sat the rest of the half. We didn't see him again until the start of the second half. But then you also had a period where you saw, when Hopkins was on the bench, you had Rubin and Zuby out there together. So we were playing even bigger when Hopkins went to the bench with those fouls. And so, those were 2 things that were really great to see, was more of a commitment to playing big with 3 forwards at all times. And also Rick starting to play Rubin and Zuby together a little bit. And I thought those were some pretty good minutes. And I just, the way they played in those minutes today, it's going to be very hard to guard us offensively with those 2 guys on the floor, with their size and their strength. And frankly, their shooting ability, especially Prey, but we've seen Zuby hit plenty as well. So, for me, I think that's a great development, and hopefully we get to see more of that moving forward. All right, so let's talk a little bit about some of the individual performances here. I think the one that'll grab the headlines, Lefteris Lefty Leotopoulos, off the bench in the first half. 10 points, 4 of 8 from the field, 2 of 6 from deep, and an assist. That's on the game. We've seen it from Lefty in small doses. One of the things I love about Lefty is that he is somebody who does not look scared at all. Not one bit. He has not seen a shot that he wouldn't take. He's not seen a sliver of an opening in the defense for a shot that he would not take. He won't. If he has a step, he's going all the way to the rim. He's aggressive in a way I think a lot of our guards aren't on this roster, and so it's refreshing, and it was great to see him get his chance to shine. And just indicative of that, he put up 8 shots in 18 minutes, 4 of 8, hit 50%. So pretty good. And he was taking guys off the dribble a lot better than I think we've seen this team do for the most part. So it was great, and hopefully he's solidifying a slightly larger role for himself moving forward. Dylan Mitchell, I've been a little bit down on him the last few weeks. I think he was struggling offensively a little bit, and the defense wasn't looking as good. But this was, I think, his best defensive performance in a while. He just was switching on to different players, and it didn't matter who he was guarding. He was holding them down. He was absolutely smothering the guards with his length on the perimeter. I don't think any of them were really able to blow by him. He was bodying up strong with Ajayi, forcing, the kickback passes or forcing a bad shot. And so, I just thought he did a great job tonight on the defensive end. He had a block and a steal for the stat categories, but really just, a good performance defensively. And I think he was key. I think, in the second half, I think there was a lot more of him on Ajayi as opposed to Bizjack or one of the other guards. And so, in that second half, I just thought he did a really good job on Ajayi, just bottling him up, playing physical. And even on offense, he had 5 assists. What do you have? He had a bunch of assists. Let's look at the wrong box score. This is riveting podcasting. Oh, yeah, 5 assists. I should have trusted my gut. 5 assists, and he was doing a great job of that. He was hitting cutters over the top. He even had one more that should have been an assist. Had Sellers not gotten rejected on a dunk attempt that was not even defended. So yeah, I just loved what I saw from Mitchell, and if he gives us some more of that point forward stuff offensively, then he'll should be playing the 33 minutes a game that he played tonight, because his defense is invaluable when his offense is doing something productive on that end. Sannon, I thought much better performance. He was much more in control. I think he was trying to do a lot and trying to do a bit too much in that Providence game. He was 1 of 12, and it's obvious that he's in a little bit of a slump here. But tonight he pared it back a little bit. He only took 5 field goals. He made 2 of them, 1 of 3 from deep. So not terrible. He took a couple mid-range shots that were good looks, got himself open, but just missed the shot. And so, he's looking better. Hopefully that shooting is going to come around soon, and then, we can get back to talking about him and how many points he's pouring in and how well he's shooting. Zuby, Zuby was Zuby. 18 points, 5 boards, 2 assists, a block, and 3 steals. I think that was a key here too, because the next guy on my list is Ruben Prey, and he had 2 steals. So that your 2 biggest players using their length and size to steal the ball, strip guys in the lane, etc. Definitely was key to that turnover margin. And Prey, I thought he played good defense as well. He did a good job switching. He did a good job of keeping, Ajayi further away from the basket. He kind of, held him right around the free throw line a couple of times, just with good quick lateral quickness. I was going to say quick lateral movement, but yeah, with his lateral quickness, keeping Ajayi in front of him. And he only had 1 rebound. That felt odd to me when I looked at the stat sheet, but that's what it says. So I guess, he had I don't think he really missed any, because I didn't think negatively about his rebounding performance, but only the 1 rebound there to go with 10 points, 4 or 5 from the field, and 2 of 2 from deep. And I just, Ruben's got such great touch. I love his shot. I love his stroke. I love his little hooks around the basket, and just another good performance from him. Got some more minutes and made the most of them. So kudos to him. 18 minutes, his season high. All right. Last but definitely not least, on the guys I want to touch on and talk about, Bryce Hopkins. Tip of the hat. Showed that mental toughness out there. He looked tougher today than I think I've seen him, or yesterday. Looked tougher than I think we've seen him all year. He was going up strong for boards. He came out possessed in that second half. I don't know if it was having to sit on the bench for the whole first half, or if it was the chip on his shoulder finally that came from Providence, and that Jameer Jones quote. Thanks, Jameer, if that had something to do with it. So I think that was a positive development, and hopefully he keeps carrying that ship forward, and maybe something finally clicked for him. We know we heard Rick talk about last year's team where he knew when it clicked for them. He's talked about that, and so hopefully something clicked there for Hopkins. Full line, 17 points, 4 boards, all 4 boards in the second half, and 2 assists, also both in the second half, and 2 steals, also both in the second half. So just a good all-around performance. And again, I think the front court as a whole played really good defense, and Hopkins was definitely a part of that. Another real positive thing on the the heart and toughness front, you didn't take any real haymakers in this game. We ran away with it in the second half, but you were down 5 with 3 minutes to go in the first half. You close on a nice little run there to get it tied before halftime. Side note, nice to see Rick take a timeout and draw up a play, and it was a good play with a couple of options, and I think they hit the second or third option on that play for that nice Ruben corner 3 on that ATO play. And then I also, they took a little baby punch in the second half. They got the lead up to 9, which was their biggest lead of the game at that point, St. John's. And then Butler cut it back down to 4 or 5 really quick. And then, we took a timeout. We went on a little 15-2 run coming out of the timeout and never looked back from there. So I thought that was a good job all around of the just settling down, doing what you got to do, and taking care of it. Really on the defensive end is where where that run got stifled. We forced a couple of big turnovers in that 15-2 run. There was a couple of blocks in there, and so it was the defense kind of keying the offense. A lot of fast breaks and steals, and a couple of forced turnovers too that didn't really, obviously don't show up as steals, but were definitely forced by the press and by the press and by turning up that heat with the press. Another thing, when I was talking about the Georgetown win, one of the things I touched upon was, we shot 50 something percent from three. That's obviously not a normal or sustainable pace. No, I don't know teams ever shot 50% on the year. So, we shot pretty pedestrian today. So, 50% from the field, 36.8 from deep, and 73.3 free throws. So those are all pretty close or around our season averages. And so, that tells me that you're not relying on, just a hot shooting game like we did in that Georgetown game, where we shot, 50 something percent from behind the arc. We also took care of the ball. That was really, really awesome. We, don't always do that. Only 5 turnovers. We went like 23 minutes without a turnover from the 5-ish minute mark in the first half until there was about just over 2 minutes left, and Sanan slid his foot along the floor for a turnover. Otherwise, perhaps we might have, played like 25 minutes without a turnover. The other thing, I talked about how, it was sustainable from an offensive perspective, but I think you also got to kind of put it in a little bit of context. The turnovers, kind of an anomaly for Butler, but also, just for any team. 21's a lot of turnovers to force. It's going to be tough to force that every night. And on the same token, you got a little bit lucky with foul trouble with Xavier Robinson's fouls and Ajayi's foul trouble. Ajayi still played 30 minutes, but he sat for a few minutes in the second half before they had to bring him back in because the league got too big. But when he came back in, he was completely neutered. He wasn't playing defense at the same level. He completely matadored on a Bryce Hopkins layup attempt. So it changed the game. And again, part of that is playing well enough and drawing the fouls, and some of that is just getting lucky that the player fouled you 4 times and put himself in that position. So just a little bit of perspective for a win. My other quibble, and it's a small one, especially in this game. We still gotta take more threes. Covered the numbers on it in a previous pod, so I'm not gonna do that again. But we only took 19 3-point attempts this game. We're shooting 35.3% against tie majors. We're a good shooting team. We have shooters, and we can't just let one bad shooting game against PC, rattle us from what is going to be the best way for us to score this year, given our struggles at the rim. This game we were shooting 36.8%, and yet we only took 19 attempts. And again, I also mentioned, not the most egregious in this game. We shot 81% at the rim this game, which is our second best actually, but only by a hair. So obviously that's good to see that you're, finishing at the rim. Again, something we did the other game we did it well and was against Georgetown. So, not exactly 2 front courts that are petrifying you. But it's something. I said here we finally got Ruben and Zuby on the floor together. Cole Latch has been calling for it from his microphone over at the Rapid Reaction podcast. He's been calling for it for over a year, probably, probably since the tip off of last season, before we even knew what Ruben could be, and we got to see it in earnest yesterday, and it was glorious. Uh, I thought they looked good out there together. I just think it's obviously a huge advantage on the defensive end to have two guys that big that can rebound that way, and can also guard everybody 1 through 5, right? And so that really gives you the versatility to play that. And I think that's why it's such a no-brainer to play Zuby and Ruben together sometimes. And it also gives you a mismatch on the defensive end too. The offensive end too. You got two guys that can post up down low if they get a mismatch. Not too many teams are going to have two guys big enough to guard Zuby and Ruben, at least not at a high level. And of course, they both have the ability to make a three. And so you're not going to have to worry as much about spacing as you would in another lineup where you were playing effectively your two centers. And, small sample size, but, my guy Torres on SJU tweeted it. Net efficiency rating plus 70 with Ruben and Zuby on the floor together this year. There was one other game where they tried it. I think it was a cupcake like Bucknell or something maybe. But, yeah, small sample size, but it's early returns look good, let's say, for the Twin Tower lineup, we'll call it. Another thing too, I think this game we played a lot more with the three forwards. So that was a positive, and that proves to be the best efficiency, or the two best efficiency lineups we have are both the three big lineups, just swapping out Zuby and Ruben. So, yeah, keep going three bigs, keep playing big all around, keep playing Ruben and Zuby together. Big. That should be the key to victory the rest of the season. And I think it also makes sense from an opponent standpoint when you look around the Big East. There's just not a lot of elite front courts out there that can handle three guys of the caliber that we have out there on the floor at the same time. Simple as that. A couple things. If I want to be just a little bit negative, one last time, and then we'll start winding this down. But if I wanted to be negative about one thing, it would be that we still looked a little lost when they first went to that 1-3-1 zone. Again, we're a great three-point shooting team. Not great. Very good to great. We're in that range. We're a very good three-point shooting team. That's what you need to do when there's a zone. It's not hard. And yet the guys look completely lost with ball movement and getting into spots where they could get a good shot off, or they also just looked completely unsure. I mean, there was one point where Sellers caught the ball like in between two defenders with a foot of space on either side, and he doesn't take the shot and takes a couple of dribbles and takes a more contested shot. So, they looked a little bit lost there, and, that's a Sellers thing too. He loves to pass up open threes as if that's not the number one reason we brought him in here. And then I think it's contagious because I think tonight was the first time, I mentioned I love the lefty's aggressiveness. I think tonight was the first time ever I saw him pass up an open look. I think it was also against the zone, and I think he was on the floor with Sellers at that time. And so I just thought that was funny. And, maybe he's spending too much time with Sellers there and catching that scared to shoot bug. And look, big picture, like I said, I'm not back on this team yet. I'm not going to say we're turning it around. I'm not going to get hyperbolic. We need to play a complete game for starters. I don't think there's a game where we played two complete halves, except maybe Baylor. We got to do that. Saturday's a great opportunity. This is a vulnerable Creighton team, but it's a Creighton team that I think we match up decently with. So back it up with an even better performance, a complete one. That'll have me singing the turnaround the turnaround song. And, that would be a particularly impressive place to win, too. 1-13 for St. John's all time at the Chai Health Center out there. We've lost 5 straight out there. So definitely someplace where we're looking to turn around and win. And we've had, a lot of these in the Rick era already where, we've lost X straight at X Arena. Let's add another one to that list and break this 5-game losing streak in Omaha. Stat of the day. Only 15 free throws we shot. And I thought this was interesting. And I looked at it, and we actually have a much better record when we're shooting less free throws this season. We are 3-5 when we shoot 28 or more free throws, which is funny because you think you'd get fouled more and put on the line more by, the teams that you outmatch physically, which are the Cupcakes and whatever. But most of our highest free throw performances came in the 5 losses. They came in those 5 losses that we played high majors in. And so I think one of the problems is we've covered it. We're not good at the rim. And when you're getting a lot of free throws, that usually means you're going to the rim a lot. That's where fouls tend to happen when guys are driving. And so, I think that is sort of a correlation there between free throws and, having poor shot selection and trying to go to the rim too frequently where we're not that good. And when you're, every additional shot you're going to the rim is another 3 or mid-range or whatever that you want that you're not taking. And so, I think that's just a correlation with that. And I also think it correlates with what we saw against Providence, which is an over-reliance on Zuby. And, Zuby is the one who draws a ton of fouls. He draws the most fouls because he's doing his work under the basket. He gets fouled on the rebounds. And so, if we're shooting a lot of free throws, it probably means Zuby's shooting a lot of free throws. And that means we might be, using him and relying on him a little bit too much. And, I think tied into the game planning point, if you're going to the rim, that means you're just not shooting enough threes. And I still think the best way for this team to be a good, sustainable offense moving forward is to continue to shoot threes. I think it's metrically still the best. I mean, you look at how bad we are at the rim, and I don't think anybody could really justify taking more twos or continuing to go to the rim, especially not when you offensive rebound the way we do. There's teams that never get second chance points, Creighton being one of them, rarely getting offensive rebounds. So it should be just open season from 3, and guys should not be scared or hesitating or passing up open looks. Game ball. Who else? Bryce Hopkins, baby, answering the bell after that abysmal performance versus Providence. 60% from the field, 15 points and 4 boards in just 20 minutes. And, my subjective opinion, he looked like he was going up stronger. He looked like he was playing harder. It looked like he had a little bit of a chip on his shoulder. And so, I thought it was a different guy than we saw on Saturday, and gets the game ball for it. All right, let's talk a little bit about Creighton. Yeah, we don't have a Schadenfreude minute. Skipping that today. Creighton. Gonna have to dominate the paint in this game. Creighton, not a great rebounding team. To give up a lot of offensive rebounds. They're also not a team that's going to be able to exploit our lack of ball handlers or lack of a point guard because they're 6th in steals per game, and 6th percentile in steals per game and 8th percentile in steal percentage. It's not part of their game plan. It hasn't been under the McDermott era. So it should not be too hard to take care of the ball in this game. But one thing they do that will give us trouble is they're very good defending the rim. High major opponents are shooting just 60% at the rim versus Creighton. That's 82nd percentile for a defense. So very, very good there. Given our struggles at the rim that are well documented at this point, I think I've talked about them already a couple times. You know, just don't go inside. It's not going to get you anywhere. You know, they'll let you shoot a good amount of open threes from the top of the key, going under screens and with the drop coverage. The mid range is always going to be there with that drop coverage. You know, I saw Sellers hit a couple of mid rangers today, particularly late in the game, but you know, hopefully he carries that over until Saturday. Another thing that Creighton does well, that's going to be, you know, a problem-ish for us, is that, you know, they're very disciplined. They don't foul. We're not going to go to the free throw line that much, and that's been a key component to some of our victories and some of our performances. And so, you know, we're going to have to find a way to get our points from the field and not at the line. On defense, we got to keep them out of the paint. They only take 27.4% of their shots at the rim, so very low percentage for rim, and only another 16.7% in the paint. But they convert at the rim in the 99th percentile, and I think they were like 80th or 73rd percentile or something from non-rim paint touches or paint attempts. So 70%. You just can't let them go inside. They're gonna make it, and so that's gonna be a key. You know, keeping those guys in check, sealing them off, ball denial, whatever we got to do there to keep them away from that rim. They're also 92nd percentile in the country in 3-point attempts. They're not a great shooting team. They're only 34.5% from deep, only 61st percentile. So, you know, roughly about as good as us. So, yeah, you know, pretty good. So, you know, they're going to hoist a lot of threes, and we got to try to keep them off that line, and, you know, keep them away from the rim. And you know, the other thing, these guys should not be able to hit us in our weakness on the offensive glass. They're just 25.2% in offensive rebounding percentage. That's 36th percentile. And again, that's just another thing that's not ever really been part of Greg McDermott's game plan. His guys, you know, when the shot goes up, tend to turn around and start hitting back on defense. So that's it. I mean, that's what, those are my thoughts on Creighton. Those are my thoughts on Butler. Let's hope this is the start of something. Let's hope the turnaround is coming. And go Johnnies.